Welcome in to another episode of my Dynasty Fantasy Football YouTube. Today I'm looking at some Dynasty sleepers. Make sure to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe. Let's jump into our first player. First player is Romeo Doubs. So Doubs has had a pretty good career so far. I mean, nothing special, but he was solid. As a fourth-round pick, rookie in 2022, 42 catches, 425 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3.2 catches, and 32.7 yards a game. And then in 2023, 59 catches, 674 yards, 8 touchdowns, 3.5 catches, and 39.6 yards a game. Despite all of the hype on Christian Watson and Jaden Reed, Doubs played a dominant snap share in most games in 2023. He was the wide receiver who did not leave the field last year. Now, why is Romeo Doubs a dynasty sleeper right now? Great question. So he's boring. People are bored by Romeo Doubs. Dynasty managers are just not excited. And I get it. He probably won't win you a league on his own, but he's actually the Packers wide receiver who doesn't come off the field. And Romeo Doubs is not Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who played a lot of snaps and never was targeted, never did anything. He actually did earn targets. He did produce on the snaps he received. Of the Packers wide receivers, he's the only one who's not wildly mispriced. Jaden Reed played, I believe, 3 snaps last year in 12 personnel. He didn't in the family night. He didn't in the practices. He didn't in the preseason game. Jaden Reed is never going to play in 12 personnel. Never. That is not going to happen. Jaden Reed is playing in the slot. He is the slot wide receiver. Period. Finished. That is not up for any sort of debate. Dontavian Wicks caught a long touchdown. That's making all the headlines. That 65-yard touchdown. But I'm telling you, he's the Packers wide receiver 4. He is. In the preseason game, you saw the starters were not Wicks. It was Doubs, Watson, and Reed. And then when they rotated the second outside wide receiver out, it wasn't Doubs who came off. It was Christian Watson who rotated out to allow Wicks to rotate in, not Romeo Doubs. I'm telling you, I mean, you can not like it, but the reality is that Romeo Doubs is going to be on the field and he's going to play, and we all like Jordan Love. So I think there's a path here for Romeo Doubs to provide you something usable at a cost of nothing. Let's look into that a little bit. Acquiring Romeo Doubs. So one thing I've been using lately is the Dynasty Daddy trade database. I think it's really great. I would suggest people look into that. Here are some trades that I saw recently for Romeo Doubs. Straight up for Zach Moss. I'm telling you, Zach Moss is the backup to Chase Brown. You're not going to get anything out of Zach Moss. So I'd much rather have Romeo Doubs. And then Demario Douglas for Romeo Doubs. Give Demario Douglas to get Romeo Doubs. Demario Douglas didn't look so good. He played last year in 12 personnel, not this year. It's not happening this year. He was not out there in 12 personnel. And it's Patriots offense. I'd much rather have the receiver who has more track record in the better offense. I don't really get it. So I would much rather have Romeo Doubs here. Overall, though, there's so many ways to acquire Romeo Doubs. As a throw-in, whatever you want to do. He's a player I'm targeting because there are going to be injuries. There are going to be bye weeks. And we will need assets like Romeo Doubs on our dynasty teams. Our next sleeper, J.K. Dobbins. Now, we all know that Dobbins' career has been derailed by injuries. I mean, totally derailed. As a rookie in 2020, in 15 games, he had 134 carries, 805 yards, 9 touchdowns, 6 yards a carry, and 18 catches for 120 yards. He was off to a great start, but then he tore his ACL in the 2021 preseason. Then in 2022, he struggled to play consistently, but when he did play, he actually was really good. He had 92 carries for 520 yards, 2 touchdowns, 5.7 yards a carry, 7 catches for 42 yards and a touchdown. Then, as we know, after this performance in 2023, he remained the clear starter, but he only played 1 game before suffering a torn Achilles in that game, ending his 2023 season. Now, Why do I have J.K. Dobbins as a dynasty sleeper? Now, usually I'm not in on players like this, but the price is cheap. We know the depth chart is weak, and he's still talented and looking good in camp. Plus, Gus Edwards has had a bunch of injury issues. Now, the Chargers only gave Dobbins $1.6 million with basically no guarantee. So they saw him as a flyer. I think they wanted to get someone involved from the NFL draft. They tried to do it with Kamani Vidal. But Kamani Vidal, I don't know about that. And Dobbins showed up to camp and he outplayed this contract. He was listed on the first depth chart as a co-starter with Gus Edwards, way ahead of Vidal, Jared Patterson, and Isaiah Spiller. We know, because they were on the same team, that whenever they were both available, J.K. Dobbins was way better than Gus Edwards. It was not close or a little bit of a competition, way better. J.K. Dobbins was way ahead. So it's just a question of health. And Gus Edwards, Jim Harbaugh is very doesn't believe in transparency. He doesn't do that. He's not answering questions about Gus Edwards' offseason procedure. He doesn't want to answer questions about that. I don't know. It cost him to miss a lot of time. Who's healthier right now between J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards? Neither played in the preseason game. I don't know. Dobbins is just 25 years old, younger than Gus Edwards. I think it's a lot closer between Dobbins and Edwards than we might have believed earlier. And Kamani Vidal, Kamani Vidal's not it. Kamani Vidal's going to get cut. But if you're just tuning in to the Chargers backfield and you're listening to some people hyping up Kamani Vidal, that's not the battle. This Dobbins versus Edwards battle is the battle. Kamani Vidal is fighting for his NFL career. Now, as for how to acquire J.K. Dobbins, I don't think I'd look to pay a pick for him, but we always like to make moves off of guys who are getting hyped in other locations. So one suggestion, Jordan Whittington. Now, yes, I like Jordan Whittington on the Rams, a nice stash, but I would rather have J.K. Dobbins, someone who is proven to be talented in the NFL, who is running back, if I had to choose. You never know. And secondly, Jaleel McLaughlin. Now, I don't dislike Jaleel McLaughlin, but Jaleel McLaughlin, if everything goes right, could be like the RB20. If everything goes right, which it's not going to, because that requires Javonte Williams to be out for the year, which could happen, but that's what that would require. J.K. Dobbins, with no injuries to anyone else, in a run-heavy offense with Greg Roman, could be running back one. So I'd overall say the players are of similar value, but why would I not take J.K. Dobbins in the 25 third over Jaleel McLaughlin? You get an extra third. The third's worth as much as the players anyway. So that's the kind of deal. If someone prefers McLaughlin, you could get Dobbins and have the 25 third. Dobbins is only like a year older than McLaughlin. It's not like they're 5 years apart in age. Anyway, but overall, I just think J.K. Dobbins provides an opportunity to get some fantasy value at a low price. I would take advantage of that. If you like my YouTube content, you should sign up for the Patreon. You get my rankings, access to the Discord, and the ability to ask in advance questions for the YouTube videos. Tiers begin at just $6 a month and include all of that. Also, we're entering redraft and start sit season, which will only be covered on the Patreon. This YouTube channel will remain solely focused on Dynasty Fantasy Football. If you want to know more about the Patreon, check out my Why You Should Join the Patreon video on the channel. It'll explain everything I'm offering. I really appreciate everyone who signed up and any new patrons who join. Now, our final sleeper, Khalil Herbert. And Khalil Herbert's kind of had a mixed career. I've talked about him on the channel before. In 2021 as a rookie, 103 carries, 433 yards, 2 touchdowns, 4.2 yards a carry, and 14 catches for 96 yards. 2022, 129 carries, 731 yards, 4 touchdowns, 5.7 yards a carry, and 9 catches for 65 yards. And then last year, still got pretty involved. 132 carries, 611 yards, 2 touchdowns, 4.6 yards a carry, and 20 catches for 134 yards and a touchdown. Now, why do I have Khalil Herbert as a dynasty sleeper? Well, constant injuries across the NFL. There have been a lot of injuries over the past couple of weeks. And Herbert seems expendable on the Bears depth chart. He played 14 of 20 snaps with the Bears starters in preseason week 1. DeAndre Swift made one big play, and Roschon Johnson sat out due to some minor injury. The Bears signed Travis Homer to a 2-year, $4 million contract with $1.75 million guaranteed this offseason as a special teamer. Now, Homer's really good on special teams. But if Homer's active on game days, along with Swift and Roschon Johnson, there's no room for Khalil Herbert on the game day roster. And I think Khalil Herbert is too good to just sit as a healthy and active all year. That doesn't feel right. What it feels like is this heavy usage was that Herbert was being showcased for a trade to another club that loses a running back between now and the season. And given how many injuries there have been and will continue to happen, it's my least favorite part of fantasy football is the injuries. It will happen. The Bears will not just cut Khalil Herbert because he's too good and he's on a cheap rookie deal. The acquiring team would really be taking no risk. Herbert had 5.3% breakaway runs in 2023, 12th among running backs. He had 4.4 true yards per carry, 20th among running backs. Once again, I'm not saying that Khalil Herbert's a sleeper because he's going to break out on the Bears. I'm saying he could do well in an RB2 role elsewhere. Now, how to acquire Khalil Herbert? Not really, again, looking to pay a pick for him. I'm looking to swap a player I like less or including Herbert in a bigger trade. I did see this one on Dynasty Daddy. Give A.J. Dillon, who's getting somehow camp hype, I don't know why, from the Packers, get Khalil Herbert. Khalil Herbert is an infinitely better player than A.J. Dillon. So I would easily take Khalil Herbert here. And then we're going to talk about this actually from a different angle in a second. But something like this. Let's say you have Sam Darnold, you're trading him for a 25-second, or the other way around. Add Khalil Herbert into this type of deal as a throw-in to just make it a little bit better for you on the acquiring side. But either way, I'm looking to acquire Khalil Herbert at cheap costs, especially as we head closer to the season. Now, speaking of Sam Darnold, I do have one Patreon question for today's show. It's about Sam Darnold. So let's just jump into that right now. Since J.J. McCarthy is out for the season, how do you value Sam Darnold? Is Nick Mullins a good waiver add? For me, I feel like Darnold's worth about a 25-second, kind of like I just said. He'll play the whole year unless he gets hurt. The Vikings don't have a young quarterback they're looking at developing, right? I mean, J.J. McCarthy is their franchise. Yeah, I mean, the Brock Purdy situation happened, but that's more, once in a generation type thing. I don't think the Vikings have someone like that. We know Jaron Hall sucks. And Nick Mullins is just a backup. Although I do think he would be a backup on some teams. So he's not a bad backup. As for Mullins, I'm fine adding him in deep superflex leagues. He was fantasy relevant when he started last year. If you remember, every single quarterback who played for the Vikings was fantasy relevant. When Josh Dobbs came in, he was fantasy relevant. When Nick Mullins came in, he was fantasy relevant. This offense just is, still good, even with these kind of meh quarterbacks, because Kevin O'Connell lets the quarterback throw, even if the quarterback is not super skilled. So whoever it is going to continue to get volume. They have Aaron Jones and Ty Chandler, but it's not like they have a workhorse running back. So there will still be passing volume here. As for Sam Darnold long-term, yeah, I mean, could he be the next Geno Smith or Baker Mayfield who kind of gets this chance and then resurrects their career? Yes. Could he also be the next Zach Wilson who starts for a while and we see, oh, this is not it, and they're just kind of done after that? Yes. I think it's somewhere between those two. I think Sam Darnold is right on that border. It's like 30 to 35th best quarterback. I don't think a team is going to turn a clear starting job over to him. I think his best case scenario is something like what Gardner Minshew is in now. That kind of competing for a starting job next year. I don't think he's going to be a franchise quarterback. So 25-second is about my price on Sam Darnold. Now, if you liked the video, make sure to drop a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. As always, the best way to support the channel is to subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notifications bell so you can be notified about all my exciting content as it drops. Of course, if you want my best fantasy football advice, it's available on the Patreon, Dynasty, Redraft, Start Sit, and more. And every sign-up helps support my independent fantasy content. Well, once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all later.